yes, people in Egypt probably had slaves, but they weren't their own people. They were other people. Which, guys, can we just not enslave other people for one generation? Just one generation. Jesus. Can't people just stay in their lands and just eat the corn and bake bread or something? God. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me. If you're new to my channel, I am Diamond. If you're returning, thank you so much for coming back. Today's video, we're going to be looking at Google's most searched slavery questions. Now, I know this topic is going to be touchy. No, we're not only going to be talking about black slavery. We're going to search for slavery. So whatever comes up, I'm going to give you guys information on that, and we're going to all learn together today. These Google's most searched videos, they're usually funny or celebrity gossip, but I wanted to do a different take on the trend. It's a touchy topic. It's triggering for a lot of people, but I'm here to educate and I'm here to learn as well. So we're gonna talk about it. You know me. We're gonna talk about it. First, we're gonna define slavery. And according to Wikipedia, slavery is any system in which principles of property law are applied to people, allowing individuals to own, buy, and sell other individuals as a de jure form of property. An enslaved person is unable to withdraw unilaterally from such an arrangement and works without remuneration. So basically, in layman's terms, people like me who we don't want to recite this whole definition, you working all day, no rights, no free will, and no pay. That ain't okay. Now, our first search term is did slaves, and as I said, I'm going to give you explanations for each. The first one is, did slaves build the Great Wall of China? All right, and we're on Wikipedia again. The history of the Great Wall of China began when fortifications built by various states during spring and autumn 771 to 476 BC and Warring States periods 475 to 221 BC were connected by the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, to protect his newly founded Qin dynasty, 221 to 206 BC, against incursions by nomads from Inner Asia. The walls were built of rammed earth, constructed using forced labor, and by 212 BC ran from Gansu to the coast of southern Manchuria. So we have our answer. We don't need any more answers. It was built of rammed earth, constructed using forced labor. In other words, slaves. If you're forcing someone to work, it means you're not paying them, because people will work if you pay them. Okay? If you're forcing them to work, they're not getting paid. They're slaves. The second thing we're going to look at is, did slaves build Mount Rushmore? And we're on StarTribune.com, and this article is called The Real History of Mount Rushmore. The backstory of Mount Rushmore is hardly a rich history of a shared democratic ideal. Some see the monument in the Black Hills as one of the spoils of violent conquest over indigenous tribes by a U.S. Army clearing the way for white settlers driven westward by a lust for land and gold. As it was in colonial America, the young country's expansion was fueled by manifest dynasty, a self-supreme notion that any land coveted by Euro-Americans was by province rightfully theirs for the taking. Completed in 1941, Mount Rushmore has been wildly successful as originally intended, as a tourist attraction to draw visitors to a remote place that otherwise would be largely ignored. The sculptures were chiseled by an impromptu Ku Klux Klansman on a granite mountain owned by indigenous tribes on what they considered sacred land. Jeez. Land that the US Supreme Court said in 1980 was illegally taken from them. In 2012, a United Nations human rights official endorsed returning the Black Hills Pahasapa to resident Dakota, reviving a debate over whether eligible tribes should accept a cash settlement that tops $1 billion in an interest-bearing account. A prevailing response is that tribes want the land, a basis of the 1973 occupation of nearby Wounded Knee by the Minneapolis-based American Indian movement. Well, I'd say they need the land and the money, but all right. And they don't need that small amount of money. They need more, because it's been years. It's been some time, okay? $1 billion is chump change to some of these people. So, and it's not gonna go to one person, it's gonna go to a group of people. So $1 billion is not gonna be enough. So they need to work that out. The presidents on Mount Rushmore reside in favored historical positions. Of course, their contributions to building America are amply documented and widely revered, even by young school children. But the four also sanctioned and themselves practiced dominance over those with darker skin. George Washington and Thomas Jefferson owned slaves. Abraham Lincoln famously emancipated slaves, but he supported eradicating Indian tribes from western lands and approved America's largest ever mass execution, the hanging of 38 Dakota in Mankato for their alleged crimes in the 1862 war along the Minnesota River. Teddy Roosevelt, in his The Winning of the West, wrote, "I don't go so far as to think that the only good Indians are dead Indians, but I believe 9 out of every 10 are." The is wrong with these people? Okay, and what I just read just now had a couple of words that I had to define, so I'm gonna let you guys know as well. And the first one is Dakota. The name is translated to mean friend, friendly, or allies in the Yankton, Yanktonai, and Santee dialects of the Dakota language. Okay, and Lakota is a member of a North American people of western South Dakota, also called Teton Sioux. So basically, from all of what I just read, no, Mount Rushmore wasn't built by slaves, but it was chiseled by a Ku Klux Klansman, and it was stolen land, stolen mountain, stolen hill, whatever, from the Native Americans, and it currently houses, to this day, people who owned slaves, people who hated the Native Americans, and other weird people. So doesn't have very good history behind it, but it wasn't built by slaves. Now the next search term is, did slaves wear bells? And according to the story of Texas.com, slave collar with bells, the collar with bells would have been used to deter attempted escape by a slave that had previously tried to win his or her freedom by running away. So I'm not sure if that means that they didn't wear bells generally, and only those who were caught after they escaped got the bells. I also know that not everyone who was caught got bells. A lot of them got other forms of punishment that sometimes took their lives. So yeah. The next search term is, did slaves eat chitterlings? Now I know that's not how Americans say it, but I'm not American. I am Jamaican. And that's just big facts. According to postgazette.com, slaves were forced to eat the animal parts their masters threw away. They cleaned and cooked pig intestines and called them chitterlings. They took the butts of oxen and christened them oxtails. Same thing for pig's tails, pig's feet, chicken neck, smoked neck bones, hog jowls, and gizzard. Now, reading this, the Jamaican in me is quaking. Okay, oxtails. God, I mean, I don't really eat meat because you know your girl is a vegan, but that the Jamaican in me is quaking right now. We have to stop eating oxtails and pig's tails, and we gotta stop eating these waste parts that we used to eat because we had no choice. We gotta step the hell up. If you're gonna eat meat, you gotta eat the best parts of the meat, the best types of meat. Come on, man, we gotta do this. We gotta level up. We can't still be eating the same things we ate because massa didn't want to give us the best parts of the meat, so we just had to make do. We can't still be eating those. You get what I'm saying? Just like how we used to get called the N-word because of whatever reason. And we reclaimed the N-word and now we're using it for, I don't know, saying friend. We cannot reclaim we cannot reclaim oxtails, man. We cannot reclaim oxtail. We gotta let it go. It's not what we were supposed to be eating. We were supposed to be eating the good parts of the meat. They gave us the worst part of the meat and we just kept eating it for all this time. And oxtail is expensive. Jesus. Anyway, let me get off that topic. The next search term is, did slaves build Hadrian's Wall? According to Hadrian's Wall country.co.uk, the kingdoms of England and Scotland didn't exist until hundreds of years after the Romans left Britain. Soldiers, merchants, and their wives, children, and slaves lived on Hadrian's Wall. Okay, that's just basically telling us that slaves lived on the wall, not really telling us if slaves built the wall. Now, this one seems to be the answer from EnglishHeritage.org.uk, and it says Hadrian's Wall was the northwest frontier of the Roman Empire. For nearly 300 years, it was built by the Roman army on the orders of Emperor Hadrian, following his visit to Britain in AD 122. So no, the wall was not built by slaves, it was built by soldiers, and back then, even more than today, soldiers were very well respected. Next is, did slaves build the Erie Canal? Now, after researching and going through a lot of different websites, I found a web page called rememberingtherepublic.blogspot.com, and I'll link it in the description. It is not secure, so please beware. I don't agree with a lot of the stuff that's on the web page. They were saying that slaves were well taken care of, as if they were cattle and not human beings. They were saying the conditions of free men were worse than that of slaves. They were saying that the slaves were farm laborers, etc. And that doesn't sit right with me, as well as the name of the webpage, Remembering the Republic. It just kind of gives me a weird vibe. But the answer to the question is, the canal was built by Irish indentured laborers. They were unskilled and couldn't work in the cities, so they moved to rural areas to seek work on railroads, highways, and canals. They were promised meat 3 times a day, plenty of bread and vegetables, with a reasonable allowance of liquor, and $8, $10, or $12 per month. They couldn't afford to travel to America, so it was paid for by contractors, which basically left the Irish indebted before they even started working. They were taken advantage of big time, but they were not slaves. They were indentured laborers who were tricked, overworked, and just treated terribly. But they were paid and they still received food. They still were technically free. Okay, they were not slaves. Next is, did slaves build the Parthenon? Now, I don't know what that is. According to study.com, yes, it is likely that slaves served as most or even all of the labor force for the Parthenon, given that the Athenian government owned many slaves. Now, are Athenian, that is Greece, I think. Okay, so let's look it up. All right, yes, I was right, it is Greece. And according to Wikipedia, slavery was an accepted practice in ancient Greece, as in other societies of the time. Some ancient Greek writers, including most notably Aristotle, described slavery as natural and even necessary. Wow, that guy, maybe he's not as smart as we think he is. This paradigm was notably questioned in Socratic dialogues. The Stoics produced the first recorded condemnation of slavery. Shout out to the Stoics. The principal use of slaves was in agriculture, but they were also used in stone quarries or mines and as domestic servants. All right, slavery in Greece. Now we're gonna look up what is the Parthenon. And according to Britannica.com, the Parthenon is a temple that dominates the hill of Acropolis at Athens. It was built in the mid-5th century BCE and dedicated to the Greek goddess Athena Parthenos, Athena the Virgin. The temple is generally considered to be the culmination of the development of Doric order, the simplest of three classical Greek architectural orders. Now, as a bonus, because I love y'all and I want y'all to learn, we're gonna look up something that is controversial in a way, but also already debunked. It is, did slaves build the pyramids of Giza? And according to Wikipedia, again, the consensus among Egyptologists that the Great Pyramids were not built by slaves. Rather, it was farmers who built the pyramids during flooding when they could not work in their lands. Egyptian slaves, specifically during the New Kingdom era, originated from foreign lands, which means, yes, people in Egypt probably had slaves, but they weren't their own people. They were other people. Which, guys, can we just not enslave other people for one generation? Just one generation. Jesus. Can't people just stay in their lands and just eat the corn and bake bread or something? God. Now, according to The Guardian, this article is called "The Great Pyramid Tombs Unearth Proof Workers Were Not Slaves." And this article is Monday, January 11th, 2010. So it's been 10 years of this article, 10 plus. Egypt displayed today newly discovered tombs more than 4,000 years old and said they belonged to people who worked on the Great Pyramids of Giza, supporting evidence that slaves did not build the ancient monuments. The modest 9-foot deep shafts held a dozen skeletons of pyramid builders perfectly preserved by dry sand along with jars of beer and bread for the afterlife. The mud brick tombs were uncovered last week 2010, uncovered last week near the Giza pyramids, stretching beyond a burial site first found in the 1990s and dating to the 4th dynasty 2575 BC to 2467 BC on the fringes of present-day capital Cairo. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus once described the pyramid builders as slaves, creating what Egyptologists say is a myth propagated by Hollywood films. Graves of the builders were first found nearby in 1990 by tourists. Egypt's chief archaeologist Zahi Hawass said the finds show the workers were paid laborers rather than slaves. Hawass told reporters at the site that the find, first announced on Sunday 2010, said the find sheds more light on the lifestyle and origins of the pyramid builders. Most importantly, he said the workers were not recruited from slaves commonly found across Egypt during those times. One popular myth that Egyptologists say was perpetuated in part by Hollywood held that Israelite slaves built the pyramids. Well, there you have it, folks. Pyramids were not built by slaves. They were built by paid laborers, and even though Egyptians did have slaves and could have had slaves, they were from other countries, which is terrible, and they need to be canceled for that. Now, that is it for part 1. If you guys knew all of these already, or if you learned something new, definitely let me know below in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like the video, subscribe, and turn on your notifications if you haven't done so already. Remember to exercise your rights, because a lot of people died for you to have those rights. I'll see you in my next video. Peace.